Welcome to our Public Therapy, the show where we got problems and we talk about them to you. Or to each other, I guess. I mean, we don't know who's going to listen in, who's going to watch, but we do know that we at least have each other
Yes.
and our unseen but always present third participant, Rabbi the Dog.
He was right here on his cot. I must say, speaking to you and my dog and the viewer, a lot better than shouting into either a void or the ether. Those two are very low on the list of communicative parties.
True, but both are a little relevant for our topic today, which is the big dread of the existential and how there's just a lot of existential like rabbit holes that you can fall into.
Yes, there are. And we're just coming off of recording an episode of the check-in about AI, which was hinting at this main topic about like existentialism, but not as the philosophy, as the fear, as the like why are we here question, the kind of questions that lead you down the dark path of either finding enlightenment in religion or some greater meaning, or just nihilism and saying nothing matters, which, fun fact, Friedrich Nietzsche, I don't know how
Yeah.
you're supposed to say it. There's a lot of H's and Z's in there.
You're right.
Did I
Nietzsche.
get it?
Yeah.
Okay. He even said that his philosophy is not a sustainable end philosophy. It's meant to be like this launching point where
Yeah.
you thought something, you realize none of that is true or meaningful, and so now I'm a nihilist. But when you're in this nihilist mindset is when you can reform some meaning out of no meaning.
Yeah, I guess.
Just kind of ironic because I guess like most people feel like that's just the end. Like you're a nihilist and why do anything else after? But
Well, yeah, and I prefer to look at it through the lens of Assassin's Creed. Are you familiar with the games? Like, have you played
Ezio
any?
Auditore,
Yeah.
I know that one guy. At least I
All right.
played. I think I played up to the third.
All right, so there are two things that I'll point to: Ezio, and then the fourth Black Flag. Which the story of Ezio is the story of the legacy of joining the Assassins.
He
You know,
wasn't the
his fam-
first, right? Altair was the first.
Altair was the first. He was
Okay.
like during the Crusades.
All right,
Ezio was during the Renaissance.
I'm remembering.
But he had a family lineage that were part of the Assassins, so he was in the thick of it, and he discovered it during his teenage years, but he spent his life going through that. Whereas in the fourth one, you play as a pirate who stumbles into like the assassins after leading his own life for 30ish years and kind of doing his own thing. And within the Ezio thing, the two tenets of the assassins are nothing is true and everything is permitted. And for most of the assassins, when you're in that, it's a dark thing. It kind of gives you license to kill and do anything. It's kind of this existential dread when you really break apart the philosophy at just that initial level, because Ezio's own morality is what is making him the good guy. But the actual philosophy of the assassins are so open to interpretation for everybody that it's kind of a lost void. And when you actually like start to dissect it then further in the pirate one, what they say is maybe nothing is true is saying that there isn't anything as a firm foundation, and that is not the end of wisdom but the beginning of it. And so when you're coming in from a place when you're actually analyzing it rather than in the midst of it, it's instead, like you talked about, bringing a launching point. That nothing is true means that you need to learn and dissect everything, that everything is to be understood. And then everything is permitted is saying that the structures and laws and morality that would otherwise hold you back also need to be dissected. It's saying that everything is available to you.
So why are we settling on all of these things that
Yeah,
you find
but
true? I
yeah.
see, yeah.
And it's then saying, well, now everything is now permitted to you, but that doesn't mean that everything is good for you. It doesn't mean that everything should be done. And so rather than relying on laws, like traditional morality, your upbringing, anything else, instead it's analyzing and figuring out what you should do. It's creating a morality of your own, which is interesting. It's like taking the next step after the nihilistic philosophy that is the foundation of Assassin's Creed. And so yeah, it's interesting that nihilism is actually a very exciting and hopeful like philosophy when you step out of it, when you take a step after its initial like foundations, because when you're actually in the midst of it, it is dang depressing.
Yes, especially in the transition from whatever philosophy you had pre-nihilism
Yeah.
to being in the thick of it. It's that's not good. But then in those first moments stepping into something greater, it's equally good. So I don't know what I would call it, but it's a weird trajectory where you're up high and the nihilism is this weird minima
Yeah.
that you could just swing back and forth in forever, and that's not good. Don't be Rick Sanchez, basically, is what we're getting at.
Yeah.
We've talked about Assassin's Creed. Another very famous nihilist is Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, okay? You don't want to stay down here thinking nothing matters forever, because then you don't realize how important the things that do matter.
Yep. Are you familiar with the, I believe it's French in origin. I apologize, I don't know the author's name, but it's a children's book.
Oh, no.
No, it's a children's book called The Little Prince.
No.
It's a short, kind of a 3-hour-ish read, a like kind of absurdist children's book, but it's a little prince going on an adventure, and part of it is that he has a rose, which is kind of symbolic of finding a person, a love interest, somebody to share your life with. And then he also has a fox, another partner, a friend, and something that you can, you could spend an hour analyzing what the fox actually is.
What color are the curtains? That is what I need to know.
I'll let your 9th grade English teacher take you through the Great
Okay, I'm
Gatsby
glad
and
you
analyze
got
the
that
color.
one.
Yeah,
The people
don't need
might-
to be analyzing the color of
okay.
everything.
I got you.
But the reason is that he like finds a fox, and the fox, and I'm paraphrasing, but says something like, "We shouldn't be together because right now I'm just a fox, but if you come near me and spend time with me and tame me, then I become your fox." You go from something that is just an object that has no meaning to something that does have meaning and purpose. Likewise, the Prince talks about how the rose said it was special and unique in all the world and one of its kind. But then he finds out that there are many roses all over the world, just not where he was looking. And the fox says, but that rose is unique and special, one of a kind, because it's your rose. And that's kind of the next step after finding that there is no meaning and no purpose within nihilism. Because what it then allows you to do is create meaning. Something isn't inherently meaningful, isn't inherently valuable. Instead, it's meaning and its value is something that is created by you, which is an interesting way of thinking about things. It's something that actually has a lot of, I don't know, hope and purpose. And I'm not and will never advocate for people to be nihilists, but as a thought experiment and something to help expand your horizons, it's an interesting place to dwell into for periods of time.
Yeah, I agree. Don't stay in that mindset for long, but as a thought experiment or excursion through the mind or your life experience, I totally agree. It's something you should try out. Just mentally. Maybe don't take in everything, because like all philosophies, they're flawed.
Yeah.
Right? You should take from them what you deem useful or interesting and discard the rest, honestly. I mean, read the whole thing, I guess. But yeah, don't internalize everything as fact, because Friedrich was just a depressed person with some good ideas. But I do like that. I'm going to have to read that.
The Little Prince?
Yeah, I think we've done some book related episodes. Maybe this is non-podcast. I'll just do it for fun. But it sounds really cool.
Oh, I'd be happy to go over it with you. It's such a short but great read. And, it's a children's book, but I heard somebody once describe it as like Mr. Rogers, where it's addressed for a child audience, but it treats them with such respect that like it feels like an adult can get something from it.
Right, because those kinds of messages aren't purely for children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Children can relate to that idea of like, ooh, a rose, or oh, I like foxes.
Yeah, and the absurdism gets kind of nutty, so it's
Okay,
a fun read.
Sweet. So I really like that idea of going from this philosophy where nothing is meaningful and nothing can truly be known, like nothing is true.
Yeah.
It's funny because that is a tenet in nihilism. It's like nothing can truly be known, I think is the phrase he used.
Yeah.
Or communicated, which I have harder time thinking, because I'm like, you're communicating it to me right now. But anyway, that's usually how they describe nihilism, is like the belief that nothing can be known or truly communicated. And it's kind of like the Black Flags or Assassin's Creed tenet of like nothing's true.
Yeah.
Everything permissible.
Yeah.
But after you've said like, okay, everything's meaningless, then you could either do nothing, you can find meaning, or create meaning. And I think those are all valid options to choose. Maybe the first one, not so much. Yeah, don't do nothing. You could do something, even if it's meaningless. Because, in the process of doing that nothing, maybe you just get jacked. You get swole.
I think that's inherently doing something.
Well,
like you're doing something, it might be something that you find to be meaningless, and yet it's still having a result.
I meant kind of in a metaphysical sense. Like, you imagine you're just walking in this endless circle, just nonstop. It's meaningless. There's nothing around to be done. You've seen this same turn 1,000 times, but in the process, maybe something changes. I don't know. I'm not a licensed
not gonna support that one. That sounds like a excuse to be in a dark place and just stay there and hope that like there's some external factor that just makes it better. I'm gonna argue against that one.
My point is that things can change in the process of you thinking nothing is changing. All right, maybe I didn't communicate it clearly.
Well, as nihilism would say, nothing can be communicated.
Yeah. Change can come from unexpected places. So that's fun. We kind of started with nihilism, but there's so much more than like nihilism and existentialism. You could just talk about fear or dread. Yeah. Like it doesn't need to be this like highfalutin topic. It's just like some people are afraid of things. Everyone's afraid of something.
Oh yeah.
And I could think of a few.
All right, lay out a phobia or two.
A phobia or two. I think the fear of enclosed spaces.
Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia. And is it agoraphobia? No, that's
Fear of going outside, or
okay. Not that one.
kind of the
It is
opposite.
kind of the opposite, though.
Yeah.
But then what's the high one? Acropophobia.
I
Fear of heights.
That could be it. I unfortunately don't know the exact term.
I'll just call it fear of heights. To me, they kind of all have a parent fear, and that is, and let me know if I'm, jumping to conclusions here. The fear of death, I think, is the main one, and then like it spawns things from that fear. Like, are you afraid of spiders because it could kill you, or is it just because they're creepy and fuzzy looking? Are you afraid of heights because if you fall, you die? Or is it just not even related to it? Like what fears are outside of dying? I don't understand.
Well, let me throw this out there. Dying is something that you become afraid of when you have an awareness of what death is, right? And so I don't think that a baby or even like a toddler is necessarily afraid of death until they learn what death is. That doesn't mean that they aren't afraid of things before that. And I think that that's because there is a even deeper root fear that I think you're touching on, which is a fear of pain, because, you become afraid of something that causes a negative like stimulant, right? So when you touch the stove and then you're afraid to touch it again, you're not necessarily afraid that it's going to kill you. You're afraid that it's going to hurt you. And so fear of pain is one of them. And the other, and I think this is what actually leads to fear of death, is fear of the unknown. Because that is something that even from an early age, we have as a fundamental like fear, right? So you have a baby. It's happy, it's like chilling in its mother's arms. And then you pass the baby on to a stranger.
It's like, what?
Yeah, and
what? Who is this face? What is this?
Yeah,
I've never heard this voice before.
Yeah, and there are different levels to which a baby is going to be comfortable with that unknown. And normally what I found is that even if you have a really good kid, like some of my friends are very sociable, like they are in careers where they have to, just talk to a lot of people in social settings, and they bring their kids, and it's great, and their kid gets used to that. But if the baby has been removed from someone familiar for too long, it's going to start to cry. And they all have their own length of time and their own ability to be comfortable with that removal. But they all have a clock. They all have a certain amount of time, and then they're going to get scared and they're going to start to cry out. And I think that's a fear of the unknown as a more fundamental core fear. And so that and pain, I would say, are two like fundamentals.
Okay. I am really enjoying this analysis for two reasons. One, it heavily reminds me of one of my favorite fictional works called Chainsaw Man. I don't know if you've read it.
I'm familiar.
Seen it. But for the people that aren't into this kind of fiction or anime stuff, very brief rundown. It's just a world with devils, and the devils are just reflections of concepts. So the stronger the concept, the stronger the devil. So you meet the tomato devil in like one of the first chapters, and it sucks. It's just not. Yeah. it's not strong.
Yeah, manifestation of fears made into a monster, and those monsters are called devils. And not many people are afraid of tomatoes, and so the tomato devil is not a very strong monster.
It's very, very weak. But the gun devil in the first, I guess, half of the story, or first part one, I guess, incredibly powerful because a lot of people are afraid of guns, I guess, It's a Japanese thing. I don't know if they've got some, I guess, gun law kind of a worldwide issue.
Yeah, I don't care where you are, how strict or loose your laws are. Like, you're gonna be afraid of guns in the right context.
Yeah.
Even a gun nut is gonna be afraid of a gun if it's being held at them without something to defend
Right.
themselves. A gun is always gonna be scary in a certain context.
And they have, even in that story, the primal devils, which are the strongest ones because they're the things that everyone is afraid of. So
Yeah.
they're the most powerful. And death was one of them, but you gave me the amazing idea of having an unknown devil. Like, there is a darkness devil, which is kind of that, I guess.
Well, why are we afraid of the dark?
Because of you don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's kind of your idea,
Yeah.
but I think it would be even more powerful if you somehow introduced just the unknown devil.
Yeah, well, it also reminds me of that old saying, like, the devil's greatest trick is convincing us that he doesn't exist. That, like, kind of concept of the thing that you really should be the most afraid of is the thing that you don't even know to be afraid of.
Yeah, and then you get free reign. So, yeah, and then another thing that I like about it is it allows for this kind of evolution of, like, what is your fear hierarchy over life? You know,
Yeah.
you're infant, it's like unknown things, painful things, and then eventually you're old enough to know that death is a thing, and you're like, I don't care if I'm in pain, I don't want to die, you know?
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
this dynamic process that you can, I hope, influence in a way
Yep.
to where something that you were super afraid of, you're still afraid of it, but it's not crippling fear. That would be great. And then my last point, while you were talking, what I thought of, and I can't cite my source, but I know this was a study someone did, which I don't know how they got people to sign off on this. No infants were hurt in this study, I promise, but it's still just funny to imagine. You know those, like, bridges where it's like a glass
Yeah.
base, or it's like a hallway between buildings, but you could
Yeah.
just see through the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? They put, like, babies on those.
Yeah.
And babies hated it. They were like, "No, I'm not walking. I'm not gonna crawl over there.
Yeah.
I could see the ground. That's not good."
Yeah.
You know. So even infants had some sort of either self-preservation or fear of falling. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe the fear of falling is something that is also very ingrained in people. I'm not sure. But that was just a funny point that came to mind when you were like, yeah, when you're a kid, it's like you don't know what death is yet. But maybe you know what heights are, or you know what falling is. Maybe you don't know it, but it's like an instinct. I don't know.
I know it is curious because there are a number of instinctual, like, things that we can only observe in, like, babies and toddlers that are kind of these, like, primal things. Like, I don't know if you've seen videos, but you can take, like, a relatively newborn, like, not fresh out the womb, but relatively, like, clean it off, let the umbilical cord fall out first.
You're like a couple days old.
Yeah, but then they just have this instinct to, like, hold on to a bar, almost like a tree, and then they also have the strength to kind of do that. And so there's just videos of, doctors holding the babies up, they grasp onto that, and they're able to hold themselves up, and the doctor has to, like, support them a little bit just in case, but they don't really need to because they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, just a gripping instinct.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, if you have the instinct,
Or even, like, how do they learn how to crawl? Because walking is something that they tend to do by imitation, right? But when we've, like, seen feral children, right? Those that, like, managed to survive but were abandoned in, like, the woods or something, horrific things, but instances like this have happened. They don't necessarily walk. They've just imitated whatever, like, animals or creatures are in their environment,
hopefully lots of bunnies.
and just hop around.
Yeah,
I don't
a
think
feral
I
child
don't think
bunny.
we found any feral bunny children, and
It'd be less intimidating.
yes, but
They probably do some sort of kind of ambulance, like,
yep.
all fours thing. Yeah, that's sad.
Yep. But with that, like, there's still this instinctual crawling that happens before they're able to imitate like walking structures. So it's just interesting, and it's something that they do have some instincts, like not nearly as many that we know of that are hard programmed in like in other animals. Because, you know, for example, a baby doe is able to like come out the womb and already like get on its feet and start walking.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will take from this conversation for sure is kind of like what is the real primal fears and whatever hierarchy there might be from person to person.
Yeah.
But I do love that concept of like somewhere in the top three you have pain, the unknown, and death,
Yeah.
you know, and then sub fears maybe spawn from those where you might be afraid of falling because you might die, or you might be afraid of snakes because I don't know, you don't know if it's poisonous. Who knows? It might be even mixtures of these other fears that make other ones, and that's just it's cool to think about.
Heck yeah.
I like that.
Though that'd be an interesting web to create, like to trace back. Okay, if claustrophobia is related to like fear of death, which is related to fear of the unknown, how does that web like expand? And can you go even further in to find the single like primary source?
Yeah, the fear of being alone. We didn't mention that one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Maybe giving away too much here, okay? This is satire, I swear.
No, I'm with you there. Especially,
Right, that's a big one.
Well, here's the thing. I think in COVID, we all learned the difference between being alone and being isolated. And
True.
I love being alone. I'm able to just play a video game, just think my thoughts, like do anything I want. But being isolated is terrible. And I have a real fear of being alone for a prolonged amount of time because of that fear of isolation. And
Okay, I think we just found another link then.
Yeah.
Because, like, claustrophobia is a bit like that.
Yeah.
It's a little more literal, you know? You're, like,
Yeah.
actually in a closed space without other people.
Yeah.
But in a more meta sense, isolation and loneliness, it's kind of like claustrophobia. I don't know. Not medical professionals. We're just musing here. I do think it's interesting to try to draw these kind of connections between like these primal fears in the middle and these weird ones where you start getting really far out. It's like, how many steps does it take to get to a clown?
yeah.
You know? Yeah, I think it's in the unknown arc somewhere there. It's like, who is that? Why are his shoes so big?
I don't know if I'm afraid of clowns, but I definitely know that they're evil. That's just a fact. But, alright, one last big fear each, and then I think we gotta wrap things up.
Okay, I've been talking a lot, man. If you could think of one before me, that would save me the awkward pause.
Alright, let's look at existentialism, right? Because there were, like, I'm pretty level now on the depression side of things. Like, I kind of got depression and anxiety sometimes, you know, spikes in my life, but the depression now has been pretty level. But when it was real bad, like especially in high school, part of like that insane fear was a very existential fear, just of being so small and insignificant in the universe. Just, I don't know, fear of the vastness of everything.
Fear of infinity.
Yeah, fear of infinity, and part of that as well is like the fear of our own insignificance. Like there's still occasional times when I'll wake up and be kind of groggy, and I'll be like, I have family and friends, but they are all just like fleeting like existences, like a bunch of dust and atoms like collected in a way that are interacting together for a time that ultimately like are not going to last, and neither will I. And that's a dark thought, and a like
Yeah, it shouldn't be
crazy
your
fear.
first one, but hey, I can't I can't knock it, man.
Yeah, and so I don't know. That's a couple of different things tied to in there, but it's a little bit of like fear of loneliness, fear of like infinity. I'll throw those in as kind of a cocktail.
Cool. All right. I got one, a
Yeah.
personal one, to my own heart. I think the fear of incompetence is probably a big one for not just myself. I think other people could probably relate to that fear. Like, I have nightmares sometimes
Yeah.
where you're just like at a job. It's not even my actual job. It's just like for some reason in my dream state, I have a thing that I have to do.
Yep.
And I just suck at it. I just can't do it. I can't get it done. I'm just I'm just fumbling at the task, and I'm like, oh no, I totally failed.
All right.
So I think that's a big one for me.
It is, and this just makes me want to. All right. Next episode and the one after that, we're going to dive into a personality test like session because I
Okay.
want to go into the Enneagram because you are talking about textbook symptoms of one of the categories.
Okay. I'm glad saying it could bring happy tears to my eyes because that means I could confront it and see the humor in it. Because that idea of the joke of like a night, it's a nightmare when you're experiencing
Yeah.
it. But when you think about it afterwards, it is hilarious. It's funny that your like sleeping mind will make this kind of amorphous task for you to do, and you just don't know how to do it.
And there's just such significant emotional weight
Yeah.
to what's ultimately a hypothetical.
Yeah, and again, it's not even my job. I'm asleep. But anyway, yeah, this was cool. I liked it. I know, like, some people, their main fear is AI, and that was our check-in topic. But this one, I think we got a little existential, and I liked that. I liked it a lot. So this has been our main episode of Our Public Therapy. I really enjoyed it. I hoped you, the viewer, also enjoyed it. Once a listener, now a viewer, but still valuable in all of our eyes. We post these every Monday, actually, on Spotify. The video goes on YouTube. Every other Monday, we have this check-in episode. It's a little off the beaten path, but slightly related to our main topic and also still in line with the idea of being healthy in your own life and mind. I've been Harold Owens,
Joe Jason?
and until next time, thanks for watching.